Welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. Let's talk money.
And welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. I am your moderator for the evening, Glen Craig, and the Money Mastermind panel is Kyle Prevost, Miranda Marquette, Peter Anderson, and Tom Drake. And for those of watching, you might notice we have an extra icon down there. That is Martin Dasko of the site Studentomics. Welcome, Martin. Thank you so much for being our first guest.
Thanks for having me. It's a lot of pressure being the first ever guest.
We don't bite so much, so don't worry about it. It'll be a lot of fun. In the personal finance world, there have been a lot of discussions about experiences versus things. Basically, for those who might not be following along, and I don't think a lot of people necessarily think this way, the thought is you're better off spending your money on experiences because you'll just have lifelong memories. It'll be generally better for you than accumulating a lot of stuff that is just going to cost you money, it's going to depreciate, so on and so forth. We're going to go into that. Basically, this episode, we're going to shed some light on those differences and maybe what you should be thinking about. And hopefully you could change the way you think before you go into that next purchase. So let's start with Martin. If anybody follows Martin on Facebook, you're going to see some interesting pictures. Nothing scandalous, but Martin's got some wrestling pics.
Might want to put my icon up there. Sorry.
Yeah, and we're not talking Greco-Roman or collegiate. We're talking off the top rope, full-on 80s style TV wrestling. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Martin?
Well, you said 80s style, but it's 2014 style.
That's true. You know what? I'm totally aging myself there, and I'm thinking back to the days of Hulk Hogan and whatnot. If it's different from that, I apologize.
That's okay.
That's what I think of.
Yes, I used to always want to buy things and have new clothing and new cologne. I was into cologne for the longest time. I don't know why. And in the last year or so, I really wanted to challenge myself. So I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then a gym opened up right beside my house, Battle Arts Academy. And I found out they'd have pro wrestling classes. So I figured, it's something to do. I always wanted to try it. I started attending classes. I did a few classes here and there. And then one day, the coach who works for WWE, so he pulls me aside and says, there's a show on December 21st. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't think that I would be on the show. Next thing I know, I'm on the show. I didn't realize there would be 300, 400 people in the audience watching me, as you can see in the picture, trying to hurt somebody. So at that moment, I realized that all this time I spent trying to accumulate things, those things really meant nothing. What I really wanted was experiences, was the rush of being in front of a crowd, and the rush of like going on trips, and the rush of just pushing myself. So I mean, all the things that I've ever accumulated are worthless to me now, because now I live for experiences. I live for trying new challenges, and you can't take on new challenges when you're in debt. You can't really do much, and you owe money, and you feel really strangled by all the things that you own. So here I am, wrestling and challenging myself with all sorts of random projects.
So you would say that for you, the argument is maybe a bit of a personal development type of issue. Like you're kind of rounding yourself out maybe a little bit more with your experiences than with your stuff.
Very much so, because when you focus on buying things, you always want something new, and then you keep on buying new things, and then you're forced to work, you're forced to pay off your debt, and you always think about what you're going to buy next. For me, I realized that what I really needed was to challenge myself. I know it sounds like kind of like new age and all that stuff, but I was kind of skeptical too at first until I started traveling alone. So a couple of years ago, I went on my first trip all by myself. And then I realized at that point that I really wanted to challenge myself more. So that got me into jiu-jitsu, because that's competition. And then I got into wrestling, because that's show and competition combined. So that mix has really forced me to kind of question how I spend my money and how I value things.
That's pretty eye-opening. I don't think most people go through things like that unless they maybe have that one big vacation or one big giant experience that kind of pulls it up. That's pretty awesome that at your age you've been able to come to those conclusions. There was an article from WebMD, and it talks about how there's a study that people are happier when they spend money on experiences rather than things. Certainly, that seems to be your experience, Martin. Anybody else want to talk about that on how experiences trump things?
Yeah. So we actually have a question here real quick. It says, but I think we'll get to that in a minute. But I personally am an experienced person as well. And I think that it's important to think about what really matters to you, what kind of experiences are really going to fulfill you. Like Martin talked about, he wanted to challenge himself and he wanted to try new things. And so he went traveling alone and he learned jujitsu. And so, you have to look at what helps you feel, better about what's going on and what kind of experiences are going to, kind of push you and make you feel better about what you're doing. And personally, I like experiences where I can go and be with people. I'm kind of an introvert, so it is kind of hard for me to kind of get out there and, be with lots of people, but I like to be with people that I enjoy. So to me, I like to go out to eat. I think it's fun to go out to eat with my husband and we can go and hang out, and we like to go eat out with friends or go to a game with friends and just kind of experience things with others and kind of build those connections with people. And so those are kind of the experiences that I enjoy. And then I also like travel. I like to go new places and see new things. My son and we recently went to San Diego, and that was a lot of fun to take him with me and have him experience like the beach, the ocean, these things that I enjoy, but have kind of experienced them through my son who was seeing them for the first time. So kind of those kind of connections are very important to me. And so I like those kinds of experiences.
So you'd say on top of a lot of other things, it's very much a social thing for you as well. Yes. That you're going out to eat, you're going out to games, you're going out with friends and whatnot.
Yeah, and to me that's kind of eases the situation since, like I said, I am kind of an introvert. And so, having a setting like that kind of eases the social situation for me so that I can kind of, ease into it and we all, as humans, even introverts need friends and love. And so it's nice to be able to, have those kind of situations where I can make those human connections. And then, of course, I do have to go home and be by myself and recharge. But it is nice to have those experiences.
That's interesting because Oh, go ahead, Peter.
No, I was going to say it's kind of interesting what we're touching on here as far as this is a personal finance show, but I think when you're talking about experiences versus things, it really is more of an equation beyond just the monetary aspect of it. You also need to consider what's going to make you happy in life and what's going to be the best for your well-being. And like you had said, time and again, it's been shown that people who choose those experiences over things are going to be happier in general. The problem is a lot of people, I think, have an inability to predict what's going to make them happy. So they kind of just default to choosing to spend their money on instinct. So they think, oh, if I spend money on a nice house or on a nice car, those things are going to make me happy. But in reality, there's a quick high and you feel nice about those things right away, but it quickly fades. So there was a study that was done by the San Francisco State University that found that people generally know life experiences are going to make them happier, but they still choose to spend their money on material items because they think that those items have a greater value in general. So they're making those choices basically because it's got a monetary value associated with it. Because it's easy to say, oh, this house is worth $250,000, but it's harder to say what the value of an experience is. What's the value of this trip that I went on overseas? You can say it's $2,000 for the trip, but it doesn't factor in all the other things as far as the memories that you're making, the relationships you're building with friends and family, and so forth.
It's almost like I want to say a fear of the unknown, or you'd rather put your money where you know the value is going to be. So if you're buying an iPhone, you're going to spend $200 and up or whatever it is, and you're going to be perceived value from it plus whatever maybe else you get from it. Whereas an experience, in the end, it could stink. But you can't really, like you said, you can't put a value on how great it might be 10, 20, 30 years from now. It sounds like it's almost a short-sighted vision that we like to buy stuff over our experiences, which is very interesting because I think in general, personal finance, we tend to be foiled by our own psychology a lot of times. It also sounds a little bit like, I think you mentioned buying your way to happiness. You think it's possible at all to buy your way to happiness? Does money equal happiness in any way?
I think it does to some degree. I might be the first one on here to actually lean a little more towards things, but not just impulse spending on little things like even an iPhone or something, but some bigger ticket things. Like if I was sort of comparing, do I want to spend $4,000 on a hot tub or a theater room or something compared to a trip? I think I'd get more sort of long-term enjoyment out of it instead of spending that $4,000 and it's done in two weeks. Obviously, you've got the memories forever, but just the idea of a hot tub or a theater at home is something I'm looking forward to. On the flip side of that, though, I did just go to Disneyland recently and with the kids, and it was a great experience. So I can see both sides, but I do kind of like to have some stuff. I've also admitted before I'm a recovering hoarder, though, so I try not to buy the little things anymore.
But I think something though that you said makes a lot of sense. You said when you get this hot tub or this theater room, in a way you're buying an experience that you can have every day. You could go sit out in the hot tub. That's a that's a little bit different than just buying some random blender that you're hardly going to use or whatever. But with the hot tub, you have the experience. You go out there, you bring your friends. With the theater room, you have this experience. A theater room is more than just a 50-inch TV on the wall. A theater room is an entire experience right in your house. So I think that takes into it too.
That's true.
Actually, I'd like to argue
that. What's that? Sorry, Martin.
I'd like to argue maybe your hot tub and your is more of an example of an experience, because it is a one-time purchase, but it's more of an experience in the long term. Because
it's how I want to spend the time, kind of thing. Yeah. And for that happiness per dollar, if that exists, it's I get a lot more use out of that than a 2-week vacation.
There's an economic term, and it's been a while since I've taken the classes, but it's basically you measure the utility of what you're spending the money on. So, I mean, we buy a lot of stuff, and if you put it on the shelf and it sits up there and somebody only sees it as they're passing by, it doesn't really give you a lot of utility for what you've spent on it. Yeah. But whereas if you buy something maybe like a hot tub or whatever it is, I mean, it could be an iPhone, it could be anything. If you're getting a lot of use for it and it's very productive for you, and it could be giving you experiences too, then perhaps it's not so bad, right?
You heard it from Glen.
I'm a convert. I have my own.
So here's another thing that kind of throw a wrench in things a little bit. In their book, Happy Money, The Science of Smarter Spending, Elizabeth Dunn and Michael Norton, they talked about how people almost always overestimate the impact that money and things are going to have on their happiness. So they buy things and they think these things are going to bring them a ton of happiness and a lot of fun over the years, but they tend to overestimate just how much that would be. And while money does have an impact on people's happiness, they said that the effect is rather small and tapers off once you make about $75,000 in the United States. So, it's one of those things where a certain level of income and things can definitely bring you more enjoyment, but a lot of the time you're going to be overestimating just how much enjoyment and fun that is over the years.
So this is a live show and we have a live audience, and we certainly want everybody to take part. We have our first ever question. So let's and it's a great one too. Matt is asking us, how do you decide what experiences will be worth the money? Which I think kind of plays right into what we've just been talking about. What are you getting out of it? What do you know? I wanted to say this too before I asked the question of Matt's. It seems like with things, you buy lots of stuff, but like you said, you don't get a lot of utility out of it. And I think that's the type of stuff that we're arguing against, right? But I think with experiences too, you could do the same thing. Some people collect experiences, but they don't really get a lot out of them. They just want to say, hey, I went here, I did that, I did this, just to kind of say that they did it, but they're not really kind of putting anything of their own into it, if that makes a lot of sense. So basically, let's go back to the question. How do you decide what experiences will be worth the money?
Well, it depends what kind of experience you're looking for. I mean, there's like how we all met at FinCon. That was the experience of meeting for business reasons, which turned into personal reasons. So that experience, I was looking to meet bloggers, and I mean, the price was, you pay for the ticket, you pay for your flight, you pay for your hotel, and that experience ended up becoming like totally worth it, because you met lifelong friends and you connected. So on that level, it was more of an investment and an experience, and it turned out to be a great on both fronts.
That's a good one.
Yeah, for me, I think I just want to try to maximize my happiness through my spending. I want to be able to do things that are going to make me happy, make other people around me happy, that are going to improve my relationships with my family and friends. And essentially, I want to make sure I'm spending in a smart way that isn't just spending to spend. There's actually a reason behind it.
The other thing I think when we look at experiences and stuff like that, and what money can do for you, Peter mentioned the $75,000 figure, is one thing money can definitely do is give you more leisure time to pursue whatever experiences you want. So if you're working, hours and hours and hours of overtime to give yourself an experience just to put it on Facebook, I think that sort of defeats the purpose for me, personally.
Yeah. So, and I think Matt's question is a good one. He's a friend from the Listen Money Matters podcast. I think we should mention that. But Matt's question is a good one, and I think the book that Peter mentioned, Happy Money: The Science of Smart Spending, from Elizabeth Dunn and Michael Norton, it points out that there are 5 key principles to deciding how to spend your money, and 5 things that you can look at. And so I think I think kind of looking at those can kind of help you decide if an experience is worth the money. So they say 5 key principles are: buy experiences, which make it a treat. So like, is it a treat? So if you limit access to like your favorite things, if you're spending money on something all the time, it's no longer has that same kind of pull to it. It's not as great anymore. You get used to it, becomes normal. And so they say, if it's a treat, it's worth spending time on. If they say buy time, so, spend money on something that'll, if you can get some of that time back, like when I went with my son, it says pay now, consume later. So if you pay up front and then you have it, they say that'll make you happier. And then finally, something that I found very interesting is experiences like investing in others. So they say actually spending money on other people actually makes you happier than spending on yourself. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That is interesting, because we talk about spending money, but we don't always talk about giving. Right? It seems pretty selfish. We're talking about buying our own stuff, going on vacations, going on trips and whatnot. But is there something to using your money and your time on other people? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Or experiences?
It's sort of an interesting conundrum, Glenn. And I don't know, I might come across as a little bit cynical here, but Free Economics has done some pretty interesting stuff on this. And basically they came to the conclusion that the vast majority of charitable giving is actually done simply because it makes us feel better about ourselves. It's not actually done in order to help those other people. Now, I don't know if that actually matters, because I know that if it makes me happy, and assumedly it does raise whoever's getting the money or the donation of whatever, as long as it helps them out, I don't really know if it matters sort of what my internal motivational philosophy is. But it is something to take into consideration, that it's more than sort of, this humanitarian thing that's within all of us, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you also think about when you're having that focus on yourself all the time. If you're focusing on material things all the time, it can really undermine your own well-being. I was reading another book called The High Price of Materialism by Professor Tim Kasser. And he noted in his book that people that have a central focus on financial success and material things in their lives are more likely to be distressed, have problems adjusting to life, and have low well-being. So basically, when you're giving of yourself and giving to other people, you're much more likely to be happy and more well-adjusted. So it's a win-win.
Like Martin, I know you've done some traveling. I find that many North Americans are always astounded when they do go like South America, Southeast Asia. And like I know Burma is one country that would support the theory where they actually measure their GDP and happiness, probably because their GDP figures aren't overly impressive. But it is crazy that these people, like it's a conundrum to North Americans, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating when you travel because like in North America, it's all you pretty much you live to work, but in other parts of the world, you work to live. And so like a lot of my friends here, they simply can't travel or do much because they're just stuck working. Like it's a vicious cycle. You pay your bills, you have some money left, you spend it, and then you go back, you wait for your next paycheck. But when I was in Argentina and over there, I remember one night I was out and it's 10 p.m. and there's kids playing in the streets. Everyone's eating ice cream. Everyone's so happy. In Toronto, you would never see that like on a Monday night. People seem more stressed, but down there everyone's just so easygoing, and really opened my eyes to like traveling has opened my eyes to different lifestyles and the different perceptions of wealth. To some, wealth is material items. To others, wealth is freedom.
And one thing I think you point out your friend who was working all the time, didn't have time to travel, and I think when you have a lot of stuff, when you fill up your house with things and expensive things that have to be maintained, then all of your money, so you're working hard to maintain all these things, so then you don't have these experiences that you want because you have to pay for all the things that you have that you think it's like you said, it's a vicious cycle. And I think once you get caught up in that, it's hard to get out, and you wonder why you're not happy, and why you're paying for all this stuff and not happy. And
I think you hit on something there too. A big aspect we're talking about, do you buy things or do you buy experiences? But you're still buying it. So where are you getting that money from? Is it worth to go into debt? Where does debt play into any of this? Even if it's an awesome experience, is it worth, going on that European backpacking trip if it's going to put you in debt for X amount of years? So that's a question too. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, if you go back to that book that Miranda mentioned and I mentioned earlier, The Happy Money, one of their points is it's important to pay now and consume later, because when you have that debt, they call debt a happiness killer. So, you really need to think about those things and make sure you're saving up for these vacations or whatever. Make sure you can pay for them, because if you can't, it's gonna weigh on your shoulders and it's gonna be a happiness killer, just like the book said.
For me, it comes down to priorities. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're buying an item or an experience or a car or a hot tub or whatever you're buying. If you're buying it on credit, you're still buying it at credit. So for me, like an example for me was like one of my friends, he just couldn't afford a trip, or he thought he couldn't afford a trip. He went out a lot, he smoked, he spent his money foolishly. So like, I don't give anybody any unsolicited advice. I don't preach. But I asked him, like, could you give me $20 every week? So he's like, oh yeah, I could give you $20 every week. $20 is nothing. So he gave me $20 every day for every Friday he gave me $20. And then we finished a semester, the year ended, and I told him, like, now you have enough money for a trip. And then he goes, really? It's only $20. But he didn't realize that $20 times 52 is over $1,000. So I think it comes down to priorities. Like, we all say we want to go on trips, we say we want experiences, but we just walk to the store and buy some, the newest Game of Thrones DVD or something. So I mean, if you really want to do something, I think you should make it a priority and try to make it happen. But you should never ever get into debt for a trip or for any purchase, I don't think.
Thank you for pointing that out, Martin. I don't know, like with people our age, I just find an overwhelming amount of like people graduating from school or like not even done their post-secondary yet, or, oh, I'm going to just work this job a little while and then I'll do post-secondary. But first I'm going to travel Southeast Asia and Australia, or I need to go find myself in Europe for 6 months, not working in Europe, just like mooching off people in Europe or whatever. And that just blows me away. Like, I don't know, it stokes like this fire in me, because those people tend to be the ones that come home. They're like, I want free tuition and I'm owed this and I'm owed that. And it's like, how can you chirp that when you just spent, like, not wasted, but prioritized that ahead of your financial well-being, and now you're asking the rest of society to pay for that for you?
One thing I want to recommend is if you want to travel, or obviously you should always pay for everything in advance. But if you can't, work overseas. That'll teach you the value of a dollar. I met a guy that was working at the hostel, and all they gave him was a free board and half price on drinks. So this guy learned the value of a dollar.
I think Kyle's sold. Look at him. He's ready to go.
That's not a bad deal. You just got to drink enough to make it worth it.
So before we go, we do have another question here, and I think it's a good one. Matt has given us another great one here. Are there any tricks to changing your mindset about materialism versus experiences? Do you have to find yourself at a low point, or can you train yourself into it? So what do you think? I mean, do you have to be at a point where it's like, you know what, I've got so much junk all over the place and it's not doing anything for me? I need to change something around, or is this something that you could change in a daily life? Is this something that everybody can kind of look at differently now?
I actually have a theory. It's called the garage test theory, the garage sale theory. So a couple of years ago, I held a garage sale. So I put all my stuff out, like DVDs, like old shirts, and then I had some friends come by and bring some stuff. So like it was very humbling to see, because at a garage sale, your $100 t-shirts, it's still worth $2. It's a garage sale. No one's going there to buy luxury items. So long story short, take your most expensive items, or take all this stuff around your house, have a yard sale, and see how much people pay for it, and then think about how much money you lost on that. That will open your eyes like nothing else. Like, I saw a $20 t-shirt being sold for $1. That opened my eyes. I'm like, why would I buy another $30 shirt and sell it? Or like I was selling like DVDs, and like even my friends were selling stuff, and they're like, wow, I spent $40 on that. It collected dust for 2 years, and now someone bought it for $2. Like, is it worth it? You won't really realize until you see the actual money spent versus the money you get back for it.
That's
I'd recommend that. The garage sale.
That's pretty awesome.
My big moment realizing that I was being too materialistic was when I had to move into my new house, because we packed up so much stuff and we had to move so much stuff, and some of the stuff I was packing, some of it was brand new, some of it was barely used, and it was such a hassle, and it still is a hassle. We got to get rid of a bunch more still, and you start to, like you said, it's up on a shelf, you almost forget about it, but when you start to pack a moving truck with it, it becomes a little more real about just how much junk you don't really need.
I always kid with people that you move and then you get to the new place, you start unpacking, and 10 years later you still find that 1 or 2 boxes that you've never touched. There's always like 1 or 2 at least that just go from house to house, and it's just full of stuff that isn't necessarily like memories that you're going to get to one day. Just kind of things that you're like, why am I dragging this from house to house?
Exactly.
Martin's your garage sale test reminds me of something I read about somewhere where I think it's like you take everything that's in your closet and you face all the hangers in one direction, right? So if you use it, you flip it around, and then at the end of the year, if you haven't flipped a hanger around, like, you're not using those clothes. Like, they're just sitting there. So like, you could get rid of that stuff. That stuff was not useful to you at all. It's just that same type of thing. Like, you look around and you go, what am I getting out of this?
And I think part of kind of, I guess, training yourself to be less materialistic and focus on other things is getting back to asking yourself, why? Why am I doing this? Am I doing this for status? If you're doing it to impress somebody else, I think kind of the first step to training yourself out of materialism is saying why, and answering that question within you and saying, is this important to me? Is it helping me reach my goals? Is it enriching my life? why am I doing this? And just before you spend money on things, to stop and ask yourself why, and kind of look at that. And then the other step, I think, is, after you identify what's important to you and saying, why am I doing this? I think the next step really is, saying, well, let's try some stuff out. Let me try not buying stuff, and instead perhaps, buying a little gift for somebody who might need it, or something like, well, let me see what it feels like to go, like me personally, I went and had a manicure. I'm like, what is it like to have a manicure, And it was awesome. And it was an experience I enjoyed, and it was very relaxing. And, I was like, you know what? This is something that I can make time for, because it's something that allows me to get out of the house and just kind of be pampered a little bit. And it's something silly and something, that a lot of people would say is, a waste. But I enjoy it and I like it. And it's an experience that, kind of really, helps me, feel good about stuff in a way that, another trinket sitting on my shelf doesn't. And so I think just saying why, and then trying a few things and seeing how these experiences help you, and, and taking time to kind of recenter yourself and say, well, what is important to me and what does matter to me, and how can I use my money in a way that fits with what's important to my life? And I think that kind of is how you move away from just mindlessly buying more stuff.
That sounds like a pretty good summation of everything we've been talking about tonight, and how to look at things versus experiences. Let's start to close things up here, and maybe go around and just get a final word from everybody else on thoughts of experiences versus stuff. Tom, let's start. Let's go to you now.
I think ultimately, whether you want items or you want experiences, it is about, certainly within the realm of personal finance, making sure you can afford it. I thought it was items, but you guys have convinced me maybe it's more experiences that I'm interested in. But either way, it's that person's choice what they want to do with their money, as long as they're not drowning themselves in stuff. So they've got to decide that for themselves.
And Peter, what's your final word?
Well, when it comes to experiences and things, for me, I just believe spending money on experiences and investing in people and relationships is clearly the way to go. And it really comes down to this for me: are we likely to find more happiness in our money and possessions, or through people, experiences, and being giving to others? I think the answer is clear, and I think, like Miranda was saying, we need to ask why we're buying things, be grateful for the things we already have, and then just think about what's important in our life, and try to do our best to invest in our people and relationships in our lives. So.
Kyle, what's your final word for the evening?
I think there's far more collective wisdom here than anything I can say. So I would like to cede my time to Martin so he can tell me what his personal finance-inspired wrestling finishing move might be.
I don't have a finishing move yet, because the bad guy always wins by cheating. So, I'd like to say, actually, I can throw out all the theories I want at the wall right now, but instead of throwing another theory, I want to throw out a challenge. Instead of reading any more articles about this, blah blah blah, just here's the challenge: take $100 or take $200, even better. $100 spent on items. So go to the mall, maybe buy some DVDs, buy whatever. As long as it's not a credit card, buy some things. And the other $100, use it for experiences. Take a friend out, go for coffee, go for drinks with an old friend. Reconnect with someone on Facebook. Go out, go to a conference. Go to a book signing. And then after a week, think about which one was better. The $100 you spent on those DVDs you're not going to watch, or the $100 you spent on reconnecting with friends and going out and trying out something different. I want to see some results from this challenge too.
Hey, if anybody takes Martin up on that challenge, feel free to visit our website or our Google Plus page and write about your experiences buying stuff and versus your experiences as well, and let's see what people say. Because
I'll do the challenge. How about that? I'll do the challenge. I'll report back in a week.
Nice.
We'll look forward to it. So thank you. This has been another great episode. experiences versus things. Martin, again, thank you for being our first guest. It was very brave of you. I hope you had a lot of fun. Where can our audience find a little bit more about you and see what you're up to?
I thought you would never ask.
We saved the best for last.
Studenomics.com. It's like Studenomics, but it's not Studenomics. I honestly, it's all about having a good time in your 20s while surviving financially. You can look at me. I don't look like some guy that's into finance. I got the long hair going and everything. But if I could graduate college debt free and buy a condo and flip, get into real estate, you can do it too. I never miss a party. I never miss out on having a good time. But that doesn't mean YOLO doesn't mean that you got to get drunk, spend all your money. You only live once. It means that you have to make the best decisions right now. Save your money. Don't get into debt. Make as much money as possible and live a good life. Studenomics.com.
And if anybody wants to find out a little bit more of your wrestling, where can they follow you there?
Well, that you have to come in person. The videos are actually they don't want us releasing too many videos yet, but you never know. You might see me on TV in a couple of years.
You guys all saw it here first. All right, Martin Dasko.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for watching and tuning in to the Money Mastermind Show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and our Google Plus page, Money Mastermind Show, as well as our website, the Money Mastermind Show. That's moneymastermindshow.com. And you can certainly get all of our different social avenues to follow us. And until next week, be good with your money, and we'll see you then. Thank you. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Thanks for joining us on the Money Mastermind Show. Get more information at moneymastermindshow.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Google+.